My father-in-law said it casually, like he was reminding me where the spare keys were. He leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, while my mother-in-law counted cash at the table, my cash, stacking my paychecks into neat little piles she called rent. For years, she added without looking up, you've lived under our roof. Utilities, food, wear and tear. Don't act confused. I stared at the envelope in her hand. My last paycheck, endorsed, deposited, disappeared. You said it was temporary, I said. They laughed. Together. Practiced. You should be grateful, my father-in-law replied. People your age don't get stability. We gave you a place. We taught you discipline. Outside, the house was quiet. Inside, they were smiling, the kind of smile people wear when they think they've won something permanent. That's when I noticed the receipts on the counter. Not rent, not utilities, property taxes, paid, on a house they didn't mention, a house I didn't live in. You can't leave, my mother-in-law said, finally meeting my eyes. You don't have savings. We made sure of that. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I pulled out my phone. No, my father-in-law scoffed. Who are you going to call? I looked at the receipts again, then at the address. The sheriff, I said calmly. Before I tell you what happened when I walked back in with him and why they stopped smiling, tell me this in the comments. Has anyone ever taken your money and called it help? I didn't argue. That confused them. My mother-in-law kept counting, lips moving silently as she stacked the bills, waiting for the part where I panicked. My father-in-law watched me over his mug, expecting anger, something he could swat down and call disrespect. I gave them nothing. Silence does something to people who survive on control. It forces them to talk, to justify, to reveal more than they intend. You wouldn't last a month without us, he continued, filling the quiet himself. We manage your money because you can't be trusted with it. I nodded once, eyes on the receipts. The address didn't match this house. My mother-in-law noticed my gaze and slid the papers closer to herself, too late. That's none of your business, she snapped. You pay rent. What we do with it is our concern. Rent. That word again. I checked my phone, not to call anyone yet, just to confirm the date, the deposits, the endorsements, years of them, every paycheck routed through their accounts for convenience. They mistook my calm for fear. You should thank us, she said softer now, switching tactics. We kept you afloat. I stood up, slowly. Okay, I said. I understand. Relief washed over their faces. They thought the conversation was over. It was, just not the way they expected. Their voices blurred into a memory I'd tried to normalize for years. When I first moved in, it was supposed to be temporary, 3 months, maybe 4, just until you get on your feet, my mother-in-law had said, smiling too hard. At the time, I believed her. The first paycheck went to rent, the second to catching up. By the third, they suggested it would be easier if your employer deposited it directly into their account. You're bad with money, my father-in-law said, not unkindly. This way, nothing falls through the cracks. I let them frame it as guidance, as structure, as help. Every time I asked for a breakdown, I got the same answer. Utilities, groceries, repairs, things I never saw invoices for, things I was told not to worry about. You should focus on working, my mother-in-law would say. We'll handle the adult stuff. Slowly, the language changed. My money became their money. My job became a contribution. By the time we agreed on the time to talk, they were calm again, confident, already rehearsing how they'd reframe the night before. They thought I was backing down. They didn't know the process had already started. And once it starts, it doesn't reverse, no matter how soft your voice gets. We met at their office. Not home, not a cafe, work. They chose it, thinking it gave them control, familiar ground, badges, glass walls, the illusion of authority. My parents sat side by side in a small conference room, shoulders angled toward each other like a united front. My mother reached for my hand when I walked in. I let her. It made her relax. We're glad you came, she said softly. This never should have left the family. I nodded, sat down, said nothing. The room hummed with quiet productivity outside the glass. People walking past, laptops open, a normal workday unfolding while something irreversible waited just beneath it. My father leaned forward. HR reached out this morning, he said carefully. They're asking questions. We just need to clarify context. Context. The word people use when the words themselves are indefensible. What you sent, my mother added quickly, it didn't reflect the whole picture. We were emotional. You know we didn't mean it like that. I finally looked up. Calm, measured. I sent exactly what you wrote. They exchanged a glance. That was when the door opened. A woman stepped in, badge clipped neatly to her jacket. HR. Not rushed, not angry, just prepared. Thank you for waiting, she said, closing the door behind her. This shouldn't take long. My parents straightened in their chairs. The trap wasn't the meeting, it was the setting. Because once HR sits down, family conversations become records. HR didn't start with accusations. She never does. She placed a printed sheet on the table and slid it forward slowly, letting the motion carry the weight. My mother glanced down first. Her breath caught when she recognized the message. You're not family. Timestamped. Names attached. We'd like you to explain the context of this communication, the HR manager said calmly, specifically why it was sent and whether it reflects an ongoing pattern. My father cleared his throat. It was emotional, he said, a private family moment that was taken out of context. HR nodded. Then help me understand the intent. Silence stretched. My mother laughed softly, the sound brittle. We were trying to motivate her. She's sensitive, she exaggerates. Motivate, HR repeated, typing. By disowning her? My mother's smile faltered. It wasn't literal. So you didn't mean it? HR asked. My father jumped in. We meant space, he said quickly. Boundaries. She overreacted by sending it. HR looked at him steadily. Did either of you consider that sending this message might violate the company's conduct policy regarding harassment or retaliation, especially given your shared reporting structure? My father hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer. Well, my mother said sharply, irritation breaking through. She should know better than to air family matters at work. HR stopped typing. Just to be clear, she said, voice firm now, you're acknowledging the message was sent, you stand by its content, and you believe her forwarding it was inappropriate. Yes, my father said. My mother nodded. HR closed the folder. Thank you, she said. That's all I needed. HR didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She slid another document onto the table, this one thicker. Printed policies, highlighted sections, notes in the margins.
And people who believe they own you never see the sheriff coming. I didn't argue after that. That was the part that convinced them they were right. The next morning, I thanked my mother-in-law for breakfast, ate quietly, let her talk about bills and groceries and how expensive everything had become for them. I nodded at the right moments, asked if she needed anything from the store. She softened immediately. That afternoon, I brought it up carefully. I've been thinking, I said, keeping my voice low. You're right. I don't want to make decisions I'm not ready for. I should trust you more. My father-in-law looked up from the paper, interest sharp in his eyes. I don't want tension, I added. If you're handling the money, I won't interfere anymore. I just need to understand how things work. Relief spread across the table. That's all we ever wanted, my mother-in-law said, reaching for my hand. Respect. They explained it again. Rent, expenses, sacrifice. How hard it was to carry someone who didn't appreciate structure. I listened. I apologized once, carefully. That sealed it. By the end of the night, they were smiling again, talking about repainting the rental, about upgrades, about next year. They thought I'd folded. They didn't know I'd already scheduled an appointment. They didn't know I'd printed the records. And they definitely didn't know that the next time I walked through that front door, I wouldn't be asking permission. I told them I had an errand before work. Nothing dramatic, nothing suspicious. I left the house the same way I always did. Keys on the hook, shoes by the door, posture small enough not to trigger questions. But I didn't go to work. I went to the county office first. Quiet building, beige walls. Clerks who cared more about accuracy than stories. I handed over the documents I'd printed. Pay stubs, deposit records, the property tax receipts with the address circled in red. The clerk didn't gasp. She didn't judge. She just nodded. "That's not rent," she said plainly. "That's misappropriation." Next stop was the sheriff's office. Not an emergency entrance, not flashing lights, just a desk, a chair, and a man who listened without interrupting while I explained how my wages had been taken, redirected, and used to maintain a property I didn't live in. He asked one question at the end. "Do you want to retrieve your property and documents now?" "Yes," I said. We drove back together. The house looked the same from the outside, curtains drawn, calm, ordinary. My mother-in-law opened the door with a smile already forming. It faded when she saw the uniform. "What's this?" my father-in-law demanded, stepping forward. The sheriff glanced at me once. "This," he said, "is about money that doesn't belong to you." And for the first time in years, they stopped smiling. They tried to talk their way out first. "This is a misunderstanding," my mother-in-law said quickly, hands fluttering like she could rearrange reality with enough movement. "We manage it, that's all." The sheriff didn't respond. He stepped inside, slow and deliberate, eyes scanning the room, the receipts on the counter, the envelopes, the ledger my father-in-law had forgotten to hide. "Voluntarily?" the sheriff asked, finally. My father-in-law crossed his arms. "They live here. They pay rent. We decide how it's used." "For which property?" the sheriff asked. Silence. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My father-in-law cleared his throat. "We used it to cover expenses. Another house, an investment. It was temporary." Temporary. The same word everyone uses when they think ownership blurs accountability. "So," the sheriff said calmly, pulling out a small notebook, "you redirected their wages without a written lease, without disclosure, to pay for a separate property you own." My mother-in-law laughed, brittle and high. "We're family. That's not theft." The pen paused. "Are you confirming that the funds were not used for this residence?" My father-in-law exhaled sharply. "Yes, but—" That was enough. Admission, use of funds, intent. The sheriff closed a notebook. "Thank you," he said. "That clarifies things." My in-laws looked at each other, confidence draining fast. "What happens now?" my mother-in-law asked. The answer came without emotion. "Now," the sheriff said, "we start unwinding everything." The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He asked for documents first, IDs, bank statements, any written agreement that explained why my wages had been taken. My mother-in-law rummaged through drawers too fast. My father-in-law stood frozen, staring at the floor like it might open and swallow him. "There is no lease," the sheriff said after a moment. Not a question, a statement. He turned to me. "You're entitled to your property and your records. You'll gather them now." I walked past them and into the room they'd always called mine. I packed what little I had, papers, my laptop, clothes they hadn't paid for. The sheriff watched the doorway the entire time. Behind me, I heard my father-in-law try one last explanation. "We were just holding it for them." "Holding requires permission," the sheriff replied flatly. He handed my mother-in-law a card. "You'll be contacted by the county. Wage diversion and misuse of funds are being reviewed." Her hands shook when she took it. They'd spent years deciding what I deserved. Now someone else was deciding what they'd answer for. As I zipped my bag, my mother-in-law found her voice again. "You're doing this to punish us," she said.
eyes bright with something desperate. "After everything we gave you, after all the years we kept a roof over your head." There it was, the rewrite. My father-in-law stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You walk out with that sheriff and you burn this family to the ground. Think about what people will say." The sheriff didn't intervene. He didn't need to. I met their eyes, calm. "I did think about it," I said. "That's why I brought him." My mother-in-law reached for my arm. "We can fix this. We'll pay you back. Just don't make it official." I stepped away. "It already is," I replied. And for the first time, they understood they were out of options. I didn't look back when I stepped outside. The sheriff waited until I was in the car before closing his notebook. No sirens, no neighbors gathering, just paperwork moving where it was supposed to move, for once, without their hands on it. I stayed with a friend that night, slept deeper than I had in years. The money came back slowly, not all at once. Line by line, deposit by deposit. Every paycheck returned to where it belonged. They didn't call, they didn't apologize, they didn't have leverage anymore. People think freedom feels loud, like celebration. It doesn't. It feels quiet, like owning your time, your work, your name. They said they owned me. Turns out, they were just renting my silence, and the lease expired.